everyone, it's Tara. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with my January wrap-up. I can't believe January is already done and it's February. That's crazy. Wow. Okay. So in January I read 13 books for like 4,884 pages. That's not exact, just because I carried over a book from December. I didn't finish a book in January. So it's around 4,800 pages, give or take a bit. And I did have one DNF, which was Illuminae by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I know I'm the only person on BookTube who DNF'd that book, but it was not for me. So let's just kind of get right into the books because I don't want this video to be super, super long. So yes, I'll leave a list of all of the books that I read down below so you can check them out on whatever platform you use to learn more about books. I am going to try and give a brief summary for all of them, but if you want to learn more, they're all down below. So the first book I read was Hollowpox by Jessica Townsend. This was a carryover from December, so I read about half of it in the month of January. I gave it 4.5 stars. I love this series so much. I'm so enjoying reading it. I think it's a fantastic middle grade series. Highly recommend. Because this is the third book in the series, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but in this one, you are following Morgan, as we always are. And in Nevermore, there's this new disease that is affecting all of the Wunimals. I think that's how you say it, who are basically they're animals, but they have human, they can talk, they have human personalities, but this disease is causing them to act more like their animal selves and revert to their animal instincts as opposed to having their more human characteristics. And Morgan is trying to find a cure for this disease. So I love Morgan. I love the world that Jessica Townsend has built. It's just amazing. Check it out if you haven't already. Then the second book I read was Wedding Cake Murder by Joanne Fluke, but I'm also going to talk about Christmas Caramel Murder, which I don't have, so I'll put a picture here, because I read both of those in the month of January. Did both of them as buddy reads with Linda at Linda's World of Books, and because they're in a series, I'm just going to talk about them at the same time. So I gave Wedding Cake Murder 4 stars, and I gave Christmas Caramel Murder 3.5 stars. So neither one of them was my favorite book in the series. In Wedding Cake Murder, you follow Hannah and her sister Michelle, who are competing in a a baking show, a televised baking show, and the head judge is murdered. And in Christmas Caramel Murder, you are following the town's gearing up for Christmas, and there's a Christmas play that they put on every year, and the woman who was cast to play Mrs. Claus, I have a hair, Mrs. Claus, alongside Herb, who's playing Santa. The woman who's playing Mrs. Claus winds up dead, and Lisa, Hannah's partner, Herb's wife, finds herself as a suspect in this murder. So both of them both Wedding Cake Murder and Christmas Caramel Murder had elements that I just was not a fan of. So I'm hoping that things kind of go back to the status quo in the next one. I think maybe Joanne Fluke is kind of running out of steam, because this is I think it's books 19 and 20 maybe in the series. So I'm hoping that things kind of turn around for the next one. But I didn't hate them. I just didn't love them. Without going into too much detail and going into spoilers, there were just elements in both that I was not a huge fan of. And Linda agrees with me. So there's that. Then book 4 was At Home in Mitford by Karon. I listened to this, and I did it as part of the Year in Mitford read along. This one, so At Home in Mitford kind of follows like the day-to-day life of the citizens of the town Mitford, North Carolina. It's told from Father Tim's perspective. And I mean, it was fine. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't say that. There were like some really like kind of humorous anecdotes, but for the most part, I just didn't find myself really connecting to any of the characters. Like, I wasn't invested in any of their lives, other than Barnabas the dog. Some stuff happens to Barnabas, and I was invested in that. But everything else, it was just kind of like, okay. I mean, if I had been reading it physically, I probably would have DNF'd it. But because I was listening to the audio and I could do other things while I was listening to it, I kind of just plugged along. I'm on the fence as to whether I'm going to continue the series. I have the second one checked out via Libby, so I can listen to that. But my mom just told me that she just DNF'd it. So we'll see if I continue. But like, it's not bad. I'm sure some people really enjoy it, but I just wasn't invested in it, I guess. Book 5 is Room by Emma Donoghue. I gave this 5 stars. I read this as a buddy read with Emily at Novell Novels. This was actually a reread for me. I read it like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. It is so good. I remembered why, like, I was reminded why I loved this book so much the first time I read it. So in Room, you follow Ma and Jack, and they live in Room. And Room is basically a shed, a storage shed that has been converted into a house that is in the backyard of Ma and Jack's cactor. And Ma kind of has to tell some fabrications to Jack about what the world is like, just to make Jack's life bearable as like a 5-year-old. And then Ma kind of, she loses her cool a few times because they're literally trapped in this like tiny little shed with no escape, and she is determined to find a way out. And I just love this. This is all, the entire book is told from Jack's perspective, which I think was such a good choice by Emma Donoghue, because Jack is like, first of all, he's only 5. And secondly, he has no idea what the outside world is like. He's literally never seen outside of this storage shed. And so like getting this perspective of this completely like innocent, naive child and telling this story was fantastic. It's a very hard book to read. It's not like a light topic, but it's so good and so well written. I highly recommend it. All right, then I read The Giver of Stars by JoJo Moyes. I don't know how to say her name. I gave this 4.5 stars. This book follows a group of pack horse librarians in Eastern Kentucky in the Great Depression? Yeah. I don't remember the exact year. And kind of the struggles that these women face in trying to spread literacy and just a love of reading in their community. I enjoyed it. I went into it thinking it was going to be more about like the library itself, but this more follows the individual librarians and their individual like personal struggles and their personal life. Which, I mean, was fine. I enjoyed it. I just was expecting it to be one thing, and it was a little bit different, but still really, really good. All of the women in this book are like super strong, independent women. I really loved that, and I enjoyed it. It was a very good read. There's a little bit of like a mystery, like a murder mystery element, which I loved. Not like super like murder mystery, but there is a murder that happens, and I enjoyed it. It was good. Then I read Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. I gave this 4 stars. This was another buddy read. I read this with Tia, and this one, I think both Tia and I kind of were like on the fence about like what to rate this, because guys, this has like the information in this book 5 stars, like so like important, like great information, but the format that Bryan Stevenson chose to write this in, neither one of us were like a fan of, like, at all. This mostly follows the case of Walter McMillian, who was wrongly accused and sentenced to death for a murder that he did not commit, and he was on death row for like 20 years or something. I don't remember exactly how long. I was trying to say if it said it, like see if it said it on the back, but he was on death row for a long time until Bryan Stevenson finally got him like acquitted of this. But like he wasted his life in jail for a crime he did not commit. That's a lot of the story, but every other chapter you also get like some other cases that Bryan Stevenson worked on, and it was very hard to keep track of the timeline and like all of these other cases. And I almost wish that this book only focused on the story of Walter McMillian, which I believe the movie does. I haven't watched it yet, but I believe the movie just focuses on his case. But all of the other like stories and like, you know, like cases that you learn about, they're all also interesting. It was just really confusing going back and forth, following a timeline. So I kind of 5-star information, 3-star format, so I averaged it out and gave it a 4 stars. 8 was Recursion by Blake Crouch. I gave this 4.25 stars, between a 4 and a 4.5. I feel like I'm one of the last people on BookTube to have read this as well. This follows Barry, who is a New York City cop who ends up called to like a potential suicide situation and is trying to like, you know, crisis negotiate this woman from committing suicide. He's not successful. That's not a spoiler. It happens in like the first like 2 chapters of the book. And the reason for her wanting to commit suicide is she's having these false memories, and this is just another case that Barry has heard about of this like false memory syndrome, and Barry wants to learn more about like what this new like disease that is popping up is. And so he ends up working with Helena, who is a neuroscientist who also kind of wants to put a stop to this, like the spread of this disease. And so they work together to find a cure. It's the best synopsis I can come up with without giving away anything. So a lot of the science went like way over my head in this. Like I didn't really pay attention to it. But there's this whole like mystery element to it that kept me so invested and so engrossed. So I definitely, like when I would sit and read this, I would read it so quickly. So the science, a little bit over my head. Everything else was really good. I really enjoyed it. There is like time travel and like going back in time. And if you're not paying attention to the dates at like the start of every chapter, you can get a little bit confused. So pay attention to the dates because you end up, because you go like back and forth a lot in this. So that's my one word of advice if you're reading this. Pay attention to the dates. Then I read Beartown by Frederick Backman. I gave this 4 stars. This was an audio listen. This follows, if you don't know what this is about, this follows the town of Beartown, which is like a hockey-obsessed town, and their star hockey player is accused of rape by the team's like general manager's daughter, like right before like the championship game. And the entire town is kind of like in uproar because instead of playing in the game, this kid has to, like, is in jail, basically. And this book has me torn because I didn't love the reaction of the town and how there was a lot of like victim blaming and victim shaming for this girl who accused this boy of rape. I feel like, you know, the town was very quick to like, oh, well, we need him to play, and there's no way our star would do that. And she's just lying. She, like, you knew that she wanted it, like, all of this stuff. I was not a fan of that at all. However, I really liked how this girl, like, stood up for herself, and kind of when the entire town was like turning their back on her, she like stood up for herself and was like, I'm not backing down from my, like, what happened to me, like what happened to me happened. So, I mean, I don't know, I'm torn because I really didn't like the town's reaction to it. But I really loved her reaction to it. So it was a really, like, it was a good listen. I got invested in the story. I will say, like, the actual, like, event, I feel like didn't happen till, like, almost halfway through. So, like, the first half of the book was just a lot of, like, setup of the town and the town's mentality and the relationship between these two kids, teenagers. I don't actually know how. I think they were in school. I think they were teenagers. I don't know. And, like, I liked that, and I liked that even though I know nothing about hockey, I could kind of, like, get into that, like, relate to the mentality of, like, a town being so obsessed with the sport, because I grew up in Texas, and Texas is, like, super obsessed with football. So seeing that and, like, the entire town kind of rallying around a team was cool, like, until they started, like, victim blaming and victim shaming this girl. So, I loved it for the most part, but there's, like, that one, like, really big element that, like, kind of turned me off a little bit. So 4 stars. I'll definitely read more Frederick Backman in the future. Then Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. 5 stars. I loved it. This was another audio listen. The audiobook is really good. Highly recommend. This is possibly my favorite of Angie Thomas's books. So good. So this one follows Maverick, who is Star from The Hate U Give's dad, when he was in high school, like right before his senior year of high school, and then like his senior year. And, you know, like, life's good, everything's like good until he gets the results of a DNA test that show that he is the father of his, like, friend's girlfriend's kid. And this girl basically says, oh, you're the dad, here's the baby, and, like, leaves him to raise this kid. And just the way that Mav kind of steps up and is like, I have to be here for this kid because clearly his mom's just, like, not going to be. And the sacrifices that he makes as a, like, 17-year-old teen dad, I really, 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 like, loved and respected him as a character for doing that. I mean, he doesn't always make, like, the best decisions, but he's making the decisions from, like, the best of intentions. So there's that. And then, you know, you get the fact that, like, he's a 17-year-old kid and he wants to be able to, like, hang out with his friends, but he also has a, like, 6-month-old kid at home. So I really loved it. I'm a fan of Angie Thomas. Definitely recommend reading all of her books, but this one is possibly my favorite. Number 11 is The Lottery Winner by Mary Higgins Clark. I gave this 4 stars. This is a collection of short stories following Elvira and Willie, who are 2 of Mary Higgins Clark's, like, recurring characters. They pop up in a lot of her books. So there's not really, like, a firm story throughout this. It's just their adventures after they win the lottery. And they kind of quit their day jobs. They're older. I want to say they're, like, in their 60s. So they quit their day jobs and are just kind of, you know, enjoying having $40 million to spend. And Elvira always finds herself kind of solving some crimes. So these are some of the stories of her solving some crimes. I loved Elvira and Willie as a couple. They have a really cute relationship. And it really makes me want to pick up some of the other, like, full-length books that Mary Higgins Clark wrote that feature Elvira and Willie. I've read 1, maybe 2, but I do want to read more, and I probably have more on my bookshelf, to be perfectly honest with you. So not much to say about that. It's just a collection of short stories, but if you love Mary Higgins Clark, you'll probably enjoy this. All right, then we have Chains by Laurie Halse Anderson. I gave this 4 stars. This follows Isabel, who is a 13-year-old slave living during the Revolutionary War, and her owner dies, and she was told that at her owner's death that her and her little sister would be freed, but the owner's nephew maybe is not that basically doesn't honor that statement, and they can't produce the will that says that. So Isabel and her sister Ruth are sold to this family living in New York, and this family is not great. Isabel's little sister ends up being sold to another family, so they are separated, and all Isabel wants is what she knows is rightfully hers, which is freedom, and for her sister to be safe. And so you follow her trying to fight for what she knows she deserves, and kind of not knowing which side, whether the British or the colonists are going to give her what she wants and deserves. So it's her experience with that. When I would read this, I would really, really enjoy it. I just didn't find myself gravitating towards picking it up, and at the end of the month, this was the only book I was reading, so I just wouldn't read. So I wasn't gravitating towards picking it up, like I just said, so I would go 2 or 3 days without reading. But then when I sat and read it, I was completely engrossed in the story and really enjoyed it. So I'm kind of I gave it 4 stars. This is the first book in a series, and it kind of ends, I like how it ends. It ends slightly on a, I don't want to say a cliffhanger, but I definitely think I'm going to at least try the second one, see if the second one's more, I feel the same, kind of not gravitating towards picking it up, but we'll see. But it was a good story. It was easy to read. I just didn't gravitate towards it. And then the last book that I read was Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan MacGuire. I gave that 4 stars. This is book 2 in the Wayward Children series. This one follows Jacqueline and Jillian, or Jack and Jill, from book 1, and it's their story from birth through their time in the moors, which is their world that they go to. And I mean, these are short books. They're less than 200 pages, so I don't want to say too much. I liked that. So Jack is kind of raised to be the princess, girly girl, and Jill is raised to be the tomboy. And when they get to the moors, they kind of switch roles, which I enjoyed, them kind of discovering who they are as opposed to what they were kind of raised to be. So seeing them come into their own was really cool. I almost wish, and I don't know, it kind of depends on how the rest of the series is, because in the first book, they're Jack and Jill are at this school with a bunch of other kids that have had this same experience. And then you go back, then you read book 2 and you get their backstory. And I almost wish that we got the backstory first. But if the rest of the series kind of follows suit and book 3 follows a different character and their backstory, then maybe I won't feel that I wish that this was the first book. I don't know if that makes sense. But so it kind of depends on how I don't know how the rest of the series is formatted, if you follow different characters or if you stay following Jack and Jill. I don't know. But we'll see. I'm reserving my my feelings on that to see how book 3 is, which I do plan on reading. These are super quick reads. I read these books in a day. I literally sat down January 31st at 7 o'clock at night and read this entire book. So very quick, very easy read. will continue the series. And yeah, so I'm like out of breath from like all of that talking. Those are the 13 books that I read in January. Let me know down below how your month was. What was your favorite book of the month? Mine was Concrete Rose, for sure. I just really enjoyed it. So let me know, what was your favorite book? Have you read any of these books? Are you interested in reading any of these books? Let me know that down below. Chat with me in the comments. Yeah, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy reading. Bye.